Rainer Maria Rilke, one of my very favorite poets, writes, "I am circling around God, around the ancient tower, and I've been circling for 1,000 years, and I still don't know if I'm a falcon or a storm or a great song." Well, this little series has been called Crossroads in Uncharted Territory, and today's sermon is called Where Your Road Meets the Great Road, the premise being that our whole life is uncharted territory. We've never been there before, and yet as a human race over the centuries, we are part of a cosmos which is unfolding, and so it is extremely familiar to us at a deep level. And that there are moments when things cross each other, moments to pay attention, when something big and something small cross at the right moment in your life. And in thinking about it and feeling its power, you realize there's something happening. There's a word being spoken here to you. So this is where your road meets the great road. So what's your road? Well, I was thinking that your road is really your life from birth to death. That's the road that you build. I build one, you build one during our lifetimes. And the nature of that road is that it often takes a beating. Have you found it? So like most roads built anywhere, there is wear and tear on them over time. They are affected by the heat and by the cold, by the flood and by the drought, by the traffic that's passing over it, by accident, sometimes by sabotage. I remember once interviewing a series of men and women who were basically street people, people who were addicted to things and living rough. This was in connection with an area hospital, and with the permission of these people, we asked them a set of specified questions. And we were surprised by the responses, I think, which probably tells you more about the questioner than those being questioned. In each case, every one of them felt that he or she was a person of worth. And in each case, every one of them felt that they were being looked after or looked over by some power greater than themselves. And in every case, every one of them mentioned an experience of having their small boat torpedoed at some time in their life, torpedoed right out from under them. One man said, "I came home and found my wife in bed with my best friend, and I picked up a bottle of something, and it's been patch ever since." And that's what the nature of their lives was. They were broken by something greater than themselves that simply had not been dealt with at that point in the road. A great pothole had emerged, and it was patch ever since. That was a great revelation to me. And our piece of the road is also influenced by others before we even get there. It's influenced by its location. Are we privileged or underprivileged in our life? Are we one or many? Are we on the outside of the system or are we inside it? Our piece of the road is influenced by the terrain over which we must cover and the time in which we live. Is ours a time of war or a time of peace? A time of plenty or a time of want? That will make the difference in the patch of road we build. I was watching on the news this morning those who have gone back to Dunkirk, the small number of old men and women who are left marching through the town of Dunkirk. And with tears in their eyes, they were relating the terrible things they had seen. "Far too terrible," said one, "for a 19-year-old ever to witness." Well, that's the terrain over which they had to build in their time and place. I was looking at the Great Ocean Road the other day. We went all the way out to Port Campbell, and the coach driver, who was excellent along the way, would show us patches of the original road occasionally. He'd look down among the tall trees, and there would be just a little strip of something like a twig. And then we saw the statue dedicated to those who had built the road, and we came to realize the back-breaking labor that it took to carve out that beautiful scenic drive. Those men knocked themselves out, killed themselves, building a patch of the road so that we in our time and place can enjoy its beauty and go places we've never been before. Well, I was thinking about Abraham's piece of the pavement. It's the fact that he knew very little about the earlier pieces, that you don't quite know what you're building on, do you? Oh, you get a few family stories from folk and you get an idea of who your particular grouping is or where you start, but from then on, it's up to you to build along the way. You just get a hint or a clue about who you are, what kind of tools you have in your hand for the building. Now, you read in the texts, in the great story, and it is a story of Abraham, by the way, something that's been edited and edited and edited to suit the audience down the centuries of its telling, that he was a child of mystical origins. Way back in the beginning of the tale, it says that heavenly beings came and married earthly beings, and the two of them produced a heavenly earthly being filled with visions of great things and yet torn apart by small things. And this was part of the road of the history out of which Abraham would have to build his piece. He was also a flood survivor. If you read the story back further, he was related to Noah in some way. So his family had a memory of catastrophe, and catastrophe was always part of his thoughts. Perhaps made him a little gun-shy, perhaps made him a little hesitant about going forward. He was also a casualty of family warfare. Have you been a casualty of family warfare on your road? His family fought with each other in the family of his origin and in his own life. His wife unable to bear children. He fathered children by his concubines, and that didn't go over too well after a while, and one of them was banished, young Ishmael, banished with his mother out to the wilderness, and there was Abraham standing at the gate watching this lovely woman and this treasured child who's been banished. But that has to make a mark in your road. It has to make a rut somewhere where you're building. And he was also the son of a father who settled. His father was offered the same promise by the sacred, "Come with me to a land that I'll show you." And the story says in one little verse, but Terah decided to stay where he was. That has to do something to you when you're a young child and you're striving to see where the world will take you, and your father's sitting at home, staying put, and perhaps regretting his decision and marking you with the unfinished business of his own road. Well, there it was, Abraham's road. What has your road building experience been like? Who watches you from your past and quietly or loudly says, "Here, not there, there, not here"? Anyone come readily to mind? My mother always used to say to me all the years growing up, being an only child, "Be careful, son. Be careful, son. Crossing the road, be careful, son. Meeting people, be careful, be careful, be careful." And so I'm careful. Sometimes to my detriment, I think. There are a lot of fences I've peered tentatively over, and in retrospect, I wouldn't mind jumping over a few of them, but I never did because I was careful. What blueprint of a highway did you inherit? Is it a neat highway? Is it a bold highway? Is it a highway that goes off the beaten track? Is it a highway that breaks new ground? Is it a highway that follows tradition? Each of us has a certain heartbeat as to how life works. We've inherited that along the way. And what have you found when you've dug? Was it easy going? Was it hard going? Did you hit sand? Did you hit quicksand? Did you hit clay? Our cat died a number of years ago, and we put him in the freezer for a while because our kids weren't coming home from university for a while, and we wanted to be there for the big ceremony, so there was the cat in the freezer. And our young son would pick up the other cat and open the lid, and the deceased cat would be in a liquor bag. It seemed fitting at the time. And our young son would say to the young cat, still alive, "You see that? Watch your step." Well, they all came home on the night of my birthday. It was pitch dark in November where I live, and it was cold, and I'd spent the day digging a great hole in the backyard to bury the cat, and I got down about a foot, and I hit solid clay. I couldn't go any further, and so by the time everyone gathered, we all went out in the pitch dark. I carried a candle, and we carried flowers, and we laid the liquor bag in the hole, and my wife said, "You'd better say something, you're part of the clergy." I said, "Well, you were a great cat, and right now you're as stiff as a board." It wasn't exactly from any of our new liturgy, but I'm thinking of writing it, you see. Well, after that, they threw the flowers in the hole, and everyone took the lights and went into the house. And there I was standing in the pitch black with a dead cat at my feet, And I filled it in as best I could. I couldn't even see where the hole was. It was so dark. And the next morning it looked like a battlefield from World War I out there. And our neighbors were commenting about how this group of people in a coven had gone out late at night with lights into the dark. And